Hey everyone, I want your feedback on the pros and cons of recommending different platforms for buying or selling or using Bitcoin. So historically, the option or the path forward has been extremely clear, which is Coinbase has been ahead of everybody else for a very long time. They're a very large, very reputable, publicly traded company, and all was well. The major boxes that a cryptocurrency exchange needed to check that I cared about were, cheap fees, the ability to integrate with BitKey to make it super easy to move funds over to BitKey for long-term savings, the ability to spend Bitcoin, in this case with the Coinbase debit card, and all of those things. So lots of upsides with using Coinbase. Now, recently, the problem is Coinbase changed their pricing structure, and so for small transactions of perhaps $100, for example, the fees to buy or sell Bitcoin in small amounts are as high as 4.7%, which is really just absolute, crazy town high fees. Obviously, if you buy and sell, you're losing almost 10% of the value of Bitcoin in small amounts, like if you're dollar cost averaging, where you're buying $100 a week or something like that. So that has really thrown a kink in my recommendations of people to use Coinbase, because Coinbase is really focused now on people who are buying larger amounts. If somebody does not have a lot of money, at least thousands of dollars to invest in Bitcoin, the fees on Coinbase are really cost prohibitive. Now, you can switch over to Coinbase Advanced, and that eliminates the 1% spread, and the fees are much lower, but the user interface for Coinbase Advanced is much more complicated, and there's a lot more ways to mess it up. In addition, Coinbase has gotten increasingly complex with regard to how to just the simple process of buying Bitcoin. For example, it's constantly asking you it's showing you what percent of your crypto assets are staked. They want you to stake crypto assets. So I frequently get questions from people about staking and whether they should stake Bitcoin, when the truth is you can't stake Bitcoin. Bitcoin staking is not something that even applies to Bitcoin, yet Coinbase is constantly telling people that 0% of their Bitcoin is staked when it can't even be staked. That's not even technologically possible with an asset like Bitcoin. So anyway, it's gotten more complicated to use Coinbase due to the high fees and just due to the complexity of their constantly recommending the latest crazy token that has no value and all of that. So behind and in addition to Coinbase, Cash App just changed their fees to also be quite high. Historically, Cash App's fees were not cheap, but they were not, cost prohibitive as well. I've seen multiple posts on Twitter now that Cash App is changing so that small purchases have a minimum fee, and that results in, again, those minimum fees being quite high, 3%, 4%, 5%. It's just too high. Now, for kids, there's not a good alternative, because Cash App is, to my knowledge, the only platform that allows you to be 13 years old or older and use it. So I don't think there's a good alternative there, because I don't think any of the other platforms that I would feel good about, I don't think any of them allow kids between 13 and 18, whereas Cash App does. But Cash App is also not good for anybody who's not a kid, because the platform is very restrictive. So in addition to the fees being quite high on Cash App, the limits are very low. So you can only move $2,000 per day of Bitcoin off of Cash App, and I think it's $5,000 per week. So obviously, if you're buying, if you're an adult who is, trying to build a significant Bitcoin stash, it's completely non-workable to have such low limits on Cash App. And of course, they do those limits so that they don't have to worry with money laundering or with fraud, because those limits are low enough that anybody who's doing money laundering and fraud is going to target other platforms, because, they want to steal a lot more than $2,000 at a time. But the downside, of course, is it makes the platform non-viable for people who who need more flexibility to move around larger amounts of Bitcoin. So anyway, so it's not just Coinbase that has raised fees. Cash App has raised fees as well. All right, so on the heels of Cash App and Coinbase are River and Strike. River, the average fees on River are between 1.3% and 1.4%. And so I'll run through the things I care about and tell you sort of where River stands right now. First of all, the fees are better for small transactions, is better than Coinbase and better than Cash App, but not as good as Strike and not as good as Coinbase Advanced. River, at some point, they do not, let me back up. River does not have a debit card, so there's no way to spend Bitcoin using River. They are going to roll out a bill pay feature at some point, but I don't know what the timing of that is. So you will be able to spend Bitcoin. For example, you can, do what Jack Mallers does. You can put your expenses on a credit card and pay them off using bill pay with Strike. You'll be able to do that also on River. But River does not have any plans to integrate with BitKey. Now, it's still not hard to send Bitcoin back and forth to BitKey. It's just nice to have a really elegant integration. And River is not going to have that really elegant integration. But on the upside, the user interface of River is the best of any of them. They've really thought through everything. It's really elegant. It's really easy to use. It's really straightforward. And it's easy to gift people Bitcoin. Same as Coinbase and same as Cash App. It's easy to gift people Bitcoin. Versus, I'll get to Strike, but Strike does not currently have a way of gifting people Bitcoin, which is important to me because I like gifting people Bitcoin to get them started. So River would be ideal if they had a debit card and they had the ability to integrate with BitKey, but they don't. Sorry, got to cross the street here. All right, so then you've got Strike. Strike has the lowest fees for the standard user interface of any of them, but I really don't like the app layout is confusing. It's very minimalistic, and it feels like it's just very bare bones. I really don't like the user interface of Strike. I think it's not, even though it's super minimalistic, it's not intuitive. And normally when something's minimalistic, it is intuitive because there's not that many features. But anyway, so Strike already has bill pay, so that's good. They have really cheap fees comparatively. It's still the only place you can get cheaper fees than Strike is on Coinbase Advanced for medium to large purchases. But Strike does not have a debit card, and I don't see them rolling out one in the near future, but they do plan to integrate with BitKey. So other than the app's user interface, which I just find confusing, both minimalistic and confusing. So it feels like it's missing features, but it's also like, it's super basic, but it's also not intuitive. But anyway, so Strike will have BitKey integration. It's got low fees. So there's a lot going for Strike. But again, it does not have a way to spend Bitcoin on a debit card, but neither does River. At best, they will both have just bill pay. And for BitKey, I don't know if they're going to integrate with just the ability to buy Bitcoin via Strike, or if they will also integrate with the ability to move Bitcoin over from Strike to BitKey super elegantly with an integration. And I don't know the timeline of when that BitKey integration is coming. So right now, it feels like what is the best thing to recommend is a little bit in flux. I like having one nice, easy, clean solution. And again, the obvious thing to say is, well, use Coinbase. The problem is you can't recommend Coinbase to somebody really who has small amounts of money, who's only buying Bitcoin $20 or $50 or $100 at a time, because the fees are really ridiculously high for that. And same with Cash App. So I'm really struggling on that front. You can get the best of all worlds in Coinbase Advanced, because if you're willing to put up with the user interface clutter of a bunch of different tokens that are worthless constantly being marketed to you and constantly being told that you have 0% of your assets staked, even though that doesn't even apply to Bitcoin, so it's completely superfluous. So if you can look past that and you're willing to deal with the complexity of Coinbase Advanced, which is not it's not hard, it's just not easy, then Coinbase Advanced gives you the lowest possible fees, check. Direct integration with BitKey, check. A debit card to spend it, check. And whatever the last thing was, debit card, BitKey, low fees. Feels like there was a fourth thing, but whatever. So anyway, so all that to say, it's it feels like we're coming to a head in the world of recommending, of saying, okay, it's probably going to have to bifurcate, where for a large user who doesn't mind the complexity of Coinbase Advanced, which somebody like me, Coinbase is ideal. But for somebody who just wants to dollar cost average $100 a week, River is probably a better option, because River does not charge fees for dollar cost averaging. So that's a big deal. And I don't think Strike does either. I think Strike, for recurring purchases after the first week, I think in both cases after the first week, between Strike and River, after the first week, you get no fees. So if you're buying small amounts of Bitcoin, and you're, dollar cost averaging with the same amount every week, you can get no fees. Although on River, they still charge you a spread, and the spread is still between 0.3% and 0.4%. So Strike is better on no fees on recurring, because you're not getting charged a spread, which is obviously super nice. So anyway, I would love your feedback on all this. I really want the ideal solution to recommend to people. And like I say, for the longest time, it felt like Coinbase was that, because the fees were, reasonable at least. They weren't low, but they were at least reasonable in standard mode. And it's just with their recent fee increases, and they're sort of leaning in even farther to, highlighting staking and highlighting the, random penguin coins, and it's just all the random stuff that's on Coinbase now. And the fact, and another variable is, Coinbase is being heavily targeted by hackers and scammers. I mean, heavily targeted by hackers and scammers. So the risk profile of getting targeted, if you're on Coinbase, is significantly higher than any of the other platforms right now. Now, if you've got your Bitcoin stored on BitKey, it doesn't matter. But if you don't, and it's stored on the centralized platform, obviously that's an issue. So anyway, that's the current lay of the land. I would love feedback. If there's something I'm missing, I feel like there's something I'm missing. One thing I am missing is Robinhood. Robinhood is somewhere in the middle of the pack. Their fees are quite low, so that's good. They have an integration with BitKey, so that's good. Sort of that checks two big boxes. They don't have a way of spending Bitcoin. So currently, if you're on Robinhood, there's no bill pay and there's no debit card, at least not to my knowledge. If they have one and I'm missing it, someone please let me know. But on Robinhood, their platform, again, like Coinbase, is just chock full of things they're trying to market to you. So if you're on Robinhood, they're constantly trying to get you to sign up for their credit card. They're constantly marketing random stupid tokens to you. And even if you type the word Bitcoin, they offer you two options: the real Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, which is a knockoff that no one should ever buy. So in some ways, I've thought before, it's like, well, maybe Robinhood is a good, something to recommend. But again, then I go into the user interface and I'm like, this is just complicated. So, anyway, so I'm just not sure. I would like to recommend a Bitcoin only platform, and the two leaders there would be River or Strike. But again, neither one of them just checks all the boxes yet. Now, maybe in the future they will. Maybe River and Strike will both upgrade their platforms. That maybe they'll introduce a debit card, even though I don't think that's likely for either of them in the near term. But River at least is working on bill pay, and Strike already has bill pay. Strike is going to integrate with BitKey. I don't know, maybe next year. If it's not this year, maybe next year, River will integrate with BitKey. I don't know. But Robinhood has the same issues of Coinbase, of just like, there's a bunch of junk on there. There's 26 different cryptocurrencies. They're constantly trying to sell you stocks and futures and betting markets. It's just like, these things are just casinos. And I really don't want to be recommending something that, people get lost in casino land of random tokens and random stocks and randomness that, is just not what they should be buying. So anyway, love your thoughts on this. Or if I'm missing something, again, send any feedback my way, because I want to recommend what is best for everyone, that checks the most number of boxes, that works the most elegantly. And anyway, it's kind of hard to figure out right now exactly what that is, given the fee increases by Coinbase and Cash App. And those would previously been in my recommendations was, for kids, Cash App for 13 up to 18, and as soon as somebody turns 18, Coinbase. But again, if you don't have relatively large amounts of money, or if you're not willing to do Coinbase Advanced, then, it's the fees on Coinbase are just quite high right now, which is a significant deterrent for small purchases. So let me know if you have any questions about anything. As always, I'm here to serve, and I would love your feedback on, the pros and cons of different platforms and how best to onboard people to Bitcoin. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.